This is not a test for you. Okay. So everybody be on your good behavior. Does everybody know Cheryl? Hi, this is Cheryl.
I popped up a couple times.
Program. Okay. And she's an RN and she has her master's. Anyway, and she's my boss. What we're going to do is we're going to do more of the same. And so, how's this lecture going for everybody? What are you getting out of it?
I like being able to see how everyone relates differently to the same situation.
Okay. People respond differently. You're going to respond differently, and so is a patient. Is that what you're getting out of it? Okay.
And so it gives me an idea of how I should interact with the patients and what different viewpoints that would be coming from.
Okay. What to expect?
Or not to expect.
Tell me about that.
Well, you know, you go into a room, you go in to meet somebody for the first time or get care, you expect them to be one way when they're completely the opposite.
Okay, so patients change from moment to moment,
Yeah, day to day.
day to day.
Expected, unexpected.
Expected and unexpected. Anybody else have any insights? What's working for you? What are you getting an idea of?
I like how we're able to, now we're able to see, okay, how would I deal with that? Rather than waiting till it happens to see what happens.
Right. And it's called putting it all together. Okay. You're not just going to go in there, deliver vital signs, and then go, oh, now I have to assess the patient for their psychosocial well-being. Oh, now I have to assess the patient for safety. Right? It's a process, and you have to put it all together. So Marie, tell me again one more time. What did you say?
How I would react to all the things that might happen to me or the patient. Like, am I going to just freak out, or am I going to be able to sit there and be calm and understand what's going on?
Oh, okay. Am I going to freak out?
Yeah.
Okay. What would freak you out?
But I do like to be able to think about it before it actually happens, or be prepared.
So what I'm hearing is you want to think and be prepared. Is there, if you deal with a patient and they're hard to deal with a lot of the time, and if you walk in that door with some preconception, some pre-idea of what that patient is going to behave like, can you make that patient behave in that way when they wouldn't? So you really have to stay open, don't you? That's a hard thing to do.
Especially when you're trying to keep your guard up, but keep delivering good care at the same time.
And what do you mean by guard?
Like your own personal bubble and your own protection and defense. You're trying to keep that safe, you know, just in case an incident does happen, but at the same time, you're still trying to observe and.
So what I'm hearing is you have to maintain your own well-being, but you have to also be open at the same time. And I think that's a good insight. Anybody want to add anything else?
Just as that sounds like you're professional.
Tell me more about that professional detachment. We talked about
It's
this.
okay to care. It's okay to care about these people that you're caring for. But when you walk out of the facility at night, you leave it there.
You leave it there. Is that hard to do? So can you still be warm with people and caring and still have that sense of professionalism, that professional detachment? Yeah. What happens when you find yourself just detached and not caring anymore? Yeah. You need to take care of yourself. Okay. What I want to do now is I want you to think of something. And we thought about what it would be like to all of a sudden find yourself in a car accident. You don't have the use of your legs, and maybe only have one use of your arm, right? And and we talked about what that would be like. What I want you to really think now, and did you process it through your head, or were you able to get some sense of feeling about that? Right, let's take it one step further. What would it be like to be on a downward spiral? Do you know what I mean by downward spiral? And I want you to think this in terms of your patient with Alzheimer's. A downward spiral, but it was a roller coaster. And you could never get off. What would that be like? How would that be like dementia or Alzheimer's? Downward spiral. Hmm?
It would be frustrating because you'd be able to do one thing one day, and then like the next week not have it, and then all of a sudden have it come back after everyone's already given it those.
And you'd be looking for it all the time.
You'd be what?
Looking for it all the time, like what happened to it? It went away and now it's back, and then it goes back. It went away again and now it's back.
So things.
It's very confusing.
Okay. Okay, it's very confusing, that downward spiral. And it's fast, it's a roller coaster. Okay, the movie brought that up, right? That sense of confusion, that sense of sometimes feeling like you're in charge of yourself and then the next minute not. What else would it be like?
Insecurity.
Say that, Ellen?
Insecurity and safety. You don't feel safe.
You never feel safe. And there's psychological safety, there's physical safety, right? Mental safety, none of that feels safe. What else?
Probably wouldn't want to get involved in relationships, make friends at the center, because you can't be a constant for that person. You don't want the embarrassment of them, you not remembering a conversation or you being with them and all of a sudden something happening,
Good point, withdrawal. Or withholding. You might withhold.
But you really want to get in relationships.
You're too scared, but you'd like some relationships. What else? Being on that downward spiral that's a roller coaster that you can never get off.
You'd be angry, you project your anger towards other
Mhm.
people, or if something happens and you're the cause of an accident or an injury, then you detach yourself from that. I wasn't me, it was them, they did it. They don't own up to it.
Okay, you can be angry and there's a lot of blame, there can be blame. What else?
A lot of loneliness, or like no one understands what you're going through and no one knows what it's like to lose complete control of yourself.
Okay, now I'm gonna shift this picture a little bit. You have a family member. Picture somebody you love dearly. They're on that downward spiral. That's a roller coaster that they're never going to get off of, and you're standing there watching them. You feel helpless. What else are some of the things you can feel?
I feel scared for my dad, cause I'm on that roller coaster, I'm watching it happen.
You're watching it right now, and it's scary. Yep. Frustrating.
You get angry because they left.
You feel abandoned by them. Okay, what else? So you're gonna have some really strong, that family's gonna have some really strong reactions. Just like the patient. Has anybody seen that film, Far From Her? Do you know what I'm talking about? Have you seen it, Julie Christie? It's about the Alzheimer's patient. Nobody knows who Julie Christie is. I'm dating myself. Nobody's seen that? It was up for an Academy Award. Okay, there's this lovely film, and you might want to see it. All right, and it's called Far From Her, and it's about a husband and wife dealing with the first part of Alzheimer's disease. Okay, and Alzheimer's, you'll see a progression. It's a progression from where the signs and symptoms of the Alzheimer's are starting to show themselves. You forget things, And you don't just forget where you put your keys, you forget how to get home, you forget where you are, and the place is really familiar. Where you are, you're in the supermarket that you've been there, and you've been there 20 times in the last week, and now you can't recognize the place. Okay. Then it goes to other where you have more physical and mental degeneration until you get to a point where when you see an Alzheimer's patient, they're bent over and they're shaking and they're picking at things, and they're really not aware of what's going on around them. Okay. So you see this progression, but the film's about the first part of the disease progressing to the second level. And it's a beautiful film. If you watch the film and you've ever taken care of Alzheimer's patients, you're going to go, it's kind of, they took too much poetic license. What do I mean by that? They made it pretty. And they did make it pretty. They really did make it pretty. They had Julie Christie, who's in her 60s, and she's still so beautiful. You know, she's this beautiful woman, and throughout it, the film, she maintained a sense of dignity. Even one of the nurses in the film said that this was a dignified lady. Why? Why do you think, if you're trying to tell that story about Alzheimer's, you would build a character as a writer that is very dignified? Why would you do that? That's exactly it. This is a person. You know, this tragedy is happening to them. But they are a human being, and insofar as you're a human being, no matter what your function is, you have dignity. Function doesn't determine dignity. Just because we're a human being, we're dignified, and we all have to respect that. And that film drove that piece home. You know, I was watching it in the middle of it, going, Hollywood, Hollywood, Hollywood. And then finally it clicked, because of what we've been studying here. The point is, it doesn't matter how you function in the world, just simply by being a human being, there's dignity in that, right? And we have to respect that. So that was one of the big points that it drove home for me. And I suggest you all see this. There are two other things that film pointed out, and I really want to drive this home. How many people have had relatives in extended care? Okay, yeah, so have I. All right. My mom recently died in an extended care facility from Alzheimer's. And when you put your family member in a residence, you want their personal belongings with them. They want their personal belongings with them. So they put all their names on their clothes, all their personal belongings, and for the first 2 weeks or so, you go in there, everything's where it's supposed to be. One day you walk in, and your mother, your brother, your dad is in someone else's clothes. In this film, this husband walked in and looked and said, my wife's in somebody else's sweater. This man, to this point, had never shown the slight bit of anger this husband hadn't, okay? My wife's is somebody else's sweater. It's tacky, and she would never wear that sweater. That's all he said. Are you going to have to confront that? Think about it. Clothes get mixed up. Think about putting your family member in there and they have their clothes. Do you want them in their clothes? Is that a big deal? It is.
Sorry,
It's their identity. And maybe the patient is losing that sense of identity, but those family members hang on to it, right? Who's the person, when you walk in the door and you're a family member, who's the person you really want to see sitting there?
person you know.
The person you know. Is that the person you know anymore? You've always got to keep that in mind. for you to be in someone else's clothes? And you kind of go in and out of awareness. Sometimes you're really aware of what's going on, sometimes you're not.
I think it probably confused me more because, you know, if I have like an aide telling me that those are your clothes and they're not,
So,
and you're thinking, well, are these really my clothes? Am I losing my
Right.
mind? Am I?
I hate purple. I think you're right, listen to that. You're all of a sudden in somebody else's clothes. How confused are you gonna feel about that? And then people are saying, no, it's your clothes. And you're going, no, I'd never wear purple.
It can be the other way too, you know, as they start changing and losing their identity, they start seeing someone else, and they might see an article of clothing in which they feels that they'll express who they are, and then they're telling them that's not it, and they think they have a grasp of who they are, so it can go.
Yeah, they might become attached to some other piece of clothing and they wanna wear it. Residents might share. All of a sudden you've got two women that get on like gangbusters. They sit with each other, they go to, community activities together. They start sharing clothes together. What happens when the family comes in and they don't understand that?
They get angry.
They get angry. Can you explain that? What if you can't explain that to them? What if they don't like it and you cannot say,
Just apologize.
you can apologize.
Or you can explain that that's the person. You're here for the person, and that's what they desire. You're here to act out their wishes, they want that, so you can't change their.
Yeah, I think when people are angry about something and, sometimes you can't explain, you have to apologize and try to work out a plan with them, include them in the plan, right? And try to not let it happen again. Yeah.
At least when they come.
Yeah, well, yeah, okay. So clothing doesn't just represent that a sweater will keep you warm. It represents somebody's identity, what they would wear, the color they would wear.
And it might have been, like, say, a present from the husband.
Might have been a present from the husband. Okay. But this film just drove that home in such a wonderful way, and you would never think that somebody who hasn't ever gotten angry would get angry over a piece of clothing. It happens in long-term care facilities because articles of clothing have other things attached to them than just keeping you warm or covered. It's identity, it's an expression of relationship sometimes if your husband gave you that sweater. There was another thing, and we talked about it earlier, okay? And let me ask you what you think about this. Okay, the husband's sitting outside, taking a moment, and the nurse is taking a break, having a smoke. And he's kind of gotten close to this nurse. She's known what to say and what not to say. And so he's sitting there, and I think she's the CNA. And she sits there and something had been disclosed about the husband and wife's private life. And that was an issue in that CNA's private life. And that CNA started to disclose and started to judge based on her own experience. We talked about ethics, and we talked about standards of practice. Is that okay? Why is it okay?
It's not about you.
It's not about you. Everybody has their own right to their privacy, their private life. You're going to have access to some of that information, but it's just information. It's not there for you to judge the other person by. So what do you do when somebody has disclosed something to you? It's not part of your personal standards and it's brought up, what do? You listen, right. Is listening agreement? It's listening. You can listen, you can attend,
Shows caring.
and it shows caring. Any questions about this? Okay, I recommend that you do see this film. It's you
I
can
have
just
one
see
thing
someone with,
about the clothes. Like my little sister, she always goes in and she takes my clothes, and it drives me absolutely mad. And when I see her wearing them, she almost takes on like a different personality. She takes on my personality and how I feel and how I look in them. And then I look at it, and the next time I go to put it on, I don't want to wear it. It's like she defiled it.
yeah, exactly. If you wear my clothes, you defile them.
And so it's just like my own security has been, I've been broken in.
Yeah, you've been violated. It's a violation. Another thing, it could be cultural. Does anybody remember Imelda Marcos from the Philippines?
She was
She
the
had-
shoe lady, right?
Yeah, 2,000 pairs of shoes or something. In the Philippines, you're not allowed to use other people's shoes. Why? Simply by what you said, I feel violated. There's something about me in that piece of clothing that's really important to me. In fact, when she puts it on, she becomes me. Well, the Filipinos have formalized this way of thinking in their culture, and their superstition is something evil can happen to me if you wear my shoes. So you, just if you put a article of clothing on somebody, and what if they happen to be Filipino? You're violating some of their cultural beliefs systems. So you have to really be careful. That was a really good point.
Fresh pair of shoes every day for 5 years.
What?
You said no.
You're up on that one, 2,000 pairs of shoes, I would have that in my lifetime. Another thing that I want to really point out, and we've talked about it, and I know this is kind of an overview, and we've talked about a lot of this, and now we're putting it all together. Another thing this film brought up is when in a long-term care facility, a husband or a wife, a spouse brings someone to that facility, and they're in that facility for a long time. Sometimes you're going to see that that husband will start having outside relationships, or that female will. You've got to ask yourself how you're going to react to that. Okay. This film did it. The husband became attached to another woman whose husband was in that unit. And they became attached to each other because the two Alzheimer's patients became attached to each other. You'll see budding romances between people in these, in long-term care or nursing care facilities. And they may have Alzheimer's, but they can still love, and they still can care. They won't realize that they're out of their boundaries, although they can't maintain the normal cultural norms. They don't have the idea of what their marriage was all the time. They don't remember their spouse, and they'll find attachments. Can you laugh at them about this? They may have moments where they're sexually active as well. And this film brought it up. How are you going to feel about the husband who leaves the nursing care facility and has his new girlfriend parked in the front of the... It's none of your business, is it? Yeah. And it drove us home. Another thing that this film drove home is residents do have a need for contact, physical contact, and it can lead to sexual activity. This is normal. Also, people remember when they have dementia, the normal restraints aren't there. Their cultural restraints aren't there, the religious restraints aren't there. This is, so, maybe you need to suspend your own belief systems and your own standards. This can be hard to do. And among staff, you'll see a lot of laughing. It's a little embarrassing for people. So what do you do when you're sitting in the nursing, the staff room, and people start talking about it and laughing? You can get up and you can walk away, you don't engage. If you join in, how do you feel when you go face that patient again?
Judgment.
You've got that judgment in your head. And do you think those patients pick that up?
Oh, yeah.
So they can pick that up. And it can compromise the care that you can give to them. Okay, let's do a role play. Do you want a role play?
Yeah.
Did that help yesterday? What did you get out of it?
Notice how different people
You can
react.
expect unexpected.
You get to see what the unexpected. Yeah. Okay. All right. So, do you think this is a worthwhile activity? Do you want to try that one more time?
I'd like to observe it, do it.
And that's a good point. Why do you feel terrible doing it?